Hey everybody, one of the reasons that I and many other scholars believe that when the deity Adonai made their way into the northern hill country and made their way into the Israelite pantheon, they did so by adopting the Northwest Semitic storm deity divine profile, is that a lot of the early imagery associated with the deity Adonai is storm deity imagery, and in many cases seems to have been appropriated from Baal. In other words, texts, poetry that was originally dedicated to Baal was taken over, and Baal's name was removed and Adonai's name was put in their place. One possible example of this is Psalm 29, which praises Adonai's voice 7 times in terms that are very reminiscent of storm deity imagery. They talk about the voice of Adonai as thunder and as lightning and as violent weather. But there are some place names that are included in that text. One is Lebanon, another is Sirion, which is another name for Mount Hermon, which is in between Lebanon and Syria. And the third is Kadesh. Now there's a Kadesh in the southern part of Israel, but there was also another Kadesh further north of Damascus that is closer to Sirion and Lebanon. And so most scholars agree that that's the Kadesh that is being referenced here. But that Kadesh was destroyed near the beginning of the 12th century BCE. So this is very old imagery that probably was originally dedicated to the deity whose purview included Sirion and Lebanon and Kadesh, and that would be the Northwest Semitic storm deity Baal. But we have another example. In Isaiah 27:1, the author seems to be quoting from a text that is praising Baal that predates Isaiah by several centuries. So here's a text that's referred to as KTU 1.5. Column 1, lines 1 through 4 are part of the message of a deity named Mot, whose name means death, to Baal. And it says, when you killed Litan, the fleeing serpent, annihilated the twisty serpent, the potentate with 7 heads, the heavens grew hot, they withered. Now on the left you can see the transliteration of the Ugaritic, and I want you to note the last 2 words on the first line. One looks like BTN, and then there's a dot, and then there's a BR, and then an H with a dot under it. And then look at the last 2 words of the line underneath that. You have that same BTN, that's the Ugaritic word for a serpent or a snake, and then you have an indication of an ein, and then QLTN. These are the references to Litan as the fleeing serpent and the twisty or the twisting serpent. Now I want to bring in Isaiah 27:1. Now, Isaiah 27:1 is about the coming day of Adonai, and it says in the first line of the Hebrew, in that day Adonai will punish with his hard and great and strong sword, al, which means against, and then the beginning of the second line, reading right to left, Leviathan, or Leviathan, which is the Hebrew spelling of the name of the monster, whose name is spelled Litan in Ugaritic. And then next in Hebrew we have Nachash Bariach. And Nachash is the Hebrew word for serpent. It's the equivalent of the Ugaritic word BT with a little line under it, N. And then Bariach is transliterated BRH with a dot under it. And then we have the same prepositional phrase again, Baal Leviathan, Nachash Akalaton. So again, serpent, a kalaton, which would be transliterated in the Hebrew Ein QLTON. And so in the Hebrew, this is saying Adonai will punish with his hard and great and strong sword Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, the twisty serpent. And then it goes on to say, and he will kill the dragon which is in the sea. And so when we compare these two, the Ugaritic is referring to this dragon as having 7 heads, which is interesting when we get to Revelation 12, which talks about that ancient dragon, that serpent with 7 heads. But here we seem to have Isaiah pretty much quoting a tradition that is reflected in a Ugaritic text that was written over 500 years before and is directing praise at the Northwest Semitic storm deity Baal. So I would argue this indicates that in the earliest periods of Adonai's presence within Israel, they were appropriating storm deity imagery from the local storm deity Baal. And then later on we have things like the contest of Elijah with the prophets of Baal, wherein all the people declare at the end, Adonai hu ha-Elohim, Adonai hu ha-Elohim, Adonai, he is the God. In other words, this is Adonai's territory or purview, kicking Baal out. And I think it's interesting to think about how this indicates not only that they were appropriating Baal's imagery, but also that Isaiah and other authors of the Psalms, are actually out there reading the other literature that is available and the other poetry that is praising Baal, and in some cases appropriating it for Adonai.